What's up, my little bookish dweebs? Welcome back to another YouTube video. So, I am, as you probably know by now, a bit of a fantasy fan. I say this and then I don't read a lot of fantasy books, but either way, I'm a big fantasy fan. Whenever I pick one up and I finish it, I think, I love fantasy. It's so cool, people are so creative, the books are often quite long, so you're there for like a month just enveloped in this world of these brand new creatures that are nothing like your own crappy world you live in. Either way, absolutely love fantasy. Now, fantasy is a genre where I think there's a little bit of a stigma where are you cool to be reading fantasy? Are you not be cool to read fantasy? At the end of the day, you're cool to be doing whatever you want. However, that means people tend to go for the more popular fantasy books. They pick up the ones that people have read, you know, your Harry Potters, your Lord of the Rings, maybe if you're a little bit nerdier, Brandon Sanderson, maybe if you're a little bit nerdier, John Gwynne. These sort of authors where it's the big ones, it's the popular ones. But then are a little bit scared to be like, well, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this niche indie kind of review of this book that this person's put up. I don't know. Is this book I'm going to be interested in? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight 4, maybe 5 books in the fantasy genre that I think are still worth your time. So if you've looked at my channel and you've kind of read or picked up on any of the fantasy recommendations I've given, or even my general recommendations of books, and you think, yeah, this is a dude that he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to books. Then maybe these fantasy books will give you a little bit of something as well. You may have heard of these. These may be books where you're like, yeah, I've heard of all of those. What are you on about? Those are very popular books. But to me, I'm talking those people that are very much just getting into the genre, that are very much at the very high level of fantasy. They're just picking up the big stuff. Game of Thrones, as I said, these sort of massive genres where everybody knows about it. If I go to a party and I say the words Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, everybody's gonna know what I'm talking about. But if I go to a party and say these books, you're gonna go, no, I've never heard of that. So that's the kind of genre I'm talking about. Anyway, enough rambling, enough intro. If you like this video, I'd appreciate a like, a comment, and a big subscribe. Either way, I hope you enjoy the video, and let's get into 5, we'll call it 5 books in the fantasy genre that I think are a little bit underappreciated and maybe you've never heard of. So the first book is God Killer by Hannah Kaner. Now this is a book that kind of did the rounds on TikTok and is part of and slightly in the genre of women getting into fantasy over the past few years. I'm not saying women have never been into fantasy, but there have been some huge books such as Akator and Powerless and that kind of series, those kind of romantasy series where it's really got the female audience into fantasy. And I think God Killer helped a little bit with that. You've got female authors coming up and writing fantasy, which is brilliant. Love it. Now God Killer is one of those books maybe that fell into that genre. I don't know. I'm probably jumping to conclusions. Either way, it got a little bit of popularity, but I don't feel like enough popularity considering its creativeness. So the idea of God Killer is a little bit like another book I'm actually going to reference later, so I won't reference now, but will reference later. The reference, anyway, about basically it's a God Killer. This is a woman who goes around and she kills gods. Now, the gods aren't always big and scary and horrible, but they all have powers and not a regular human being can basically go and kill them. She does this out of revenge because when she was very young, a god killed her family. One day she then picks up this human or this person even who has a god attached to them. She likes the person and she's not so secure about the god, but the god seems like a decent creature. I don't quite know how to describe it. If you imagine God as like a creature or like a demon rather than actually a god as we know them, it's just the term they used in here. And she has this kind of ongoing battle, and then there is a bigger quest that goes on. They basically have to try and remove the god from this person because it's debilitating them. And yeah, it's quite an interesting story, quite creative. Now, I talked in my intro about kind of getting into the genre, and if you're new to the genre, maybe some of the longer books are quite intimidating. This is quite short. I've also got 2 other books on this list, and probably the 3rd actually. So there's only actually 1 long book on this list that's over, I don't know, 500-600 pages long. So this God Killer book is under 300 pages. So you can get this whole thing finished in like 4-5 hours of reading if you wanted to. I think the audiobook's only about 8-9 hours. So if you're a 2 times listener, do the maths, 4.5. I did the maths for you. Either way, a nice short book as well. Really interesting, stunning front cover. There is a sequel. I think there is plans for a 3rd. A great little book. So yeah, if you're interested in picking up something a little bit different and you've never heard of this, then that's God Killer by Hannah Kaner. Make sure you check it out. Give it a little read, that sort of thing. Download a preview somewhere. I don't know. Either way, the intro is quite interesting and the whole premise is quite interesting. So yeah. Now, the next book you've probably seen me preach about 100 times on this channel, and that's Iron Widow by Joanne Chait-Sao. This is a book that I picked up, I can't even remember when now because it still feels so recent, but I think I picked up last year maybe. It was a book I was kind of sent because it was on my wish list because it sounded quite cool. Now, I always try and describe it and it always makes it sound pretty crazy, but if you just read it, it's actually quite easy to understand. Basically, we are living in a fantasy world, fictitious world, kind of Asian inspired, where men, power, mecha bots to defend this place from these aliens. These mecha bots are powered by chi, which is essentially like willpower, to make them powerful. The more powerful their chi, they literally have a number, like their chi is literally a number that you measure as a child. The more powerful that, they can then like evolve these mecha bots to defeat even more aliens. And it's this ongoing battle with the aliens and the mecha bots. What they can also do is they also can have women down as co-pilots and suck their chi out to power up these bots to fight even harder, sometimes killing the women. The story we face here is a sister, or the sister of one of these women that's been killed in a mechabot, seeks revenge. Coincidentally, she also has a really powerful chi, and it's the general idea that women are just as good as men. And that's the basic plot of this. She rebels. There's some huge moments in this, like we're literally talking, I don't want to kind of spoil it, but there's a moment where you think one of the massive characters is going to be the main plot point of the whole book, but is killed off quite early on. That might help, might not be a spoiler, but you'll see when you read it. It's so good. Now, the reason I recommend getting into this is two reasons. Again, not an overly long book. We're looking at 350 pages long, and it races by. It's so quick because you're just reading it and you're like, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun, and then it's done. The reason for this is because it doesn't mess around too much with the in-between bits of fantasy, the journeying or the talking between characters. A lot of it's just action, and that builds out the personality of the characters, the things they say as a result of their choices or the choices they make in these action moments, and what builds out the personality in the characters. And it just absolutely flew by like no other fantasy book I've ever read before. This was a person, the author, Jiran Chaitao, who was just like, I have an idea, kind of an idea. I know where I want it to start. I know some of the ideas I want in the middle, and I know kind of where I want it to end. I'm just going to rush through it in as few words as possible. And it's brilliant. It's fantastic. It's so well written in a way where it's not poetic. It is just simply, she does not miss or misuse a word or overuse words. It's great. It's fantastic. I recommend it every time people say it. It's got a beautiful front cover. I know there's a sequel, and I'm not sure if there's a trilogy. I'm not even sure if the sequel's out yet, or if it is out, it's only in hardback, something like that. I don't know. Either way, great fun. Women power, mecha bots, aliens, a bit of fancy. It's fantastic. I talk about this in quite a few of my videos, so you're probably there like, yes, Luke, we know you like Iron Widow. But if you're into getting into fantasy and you've not yet read any, then I would highly recommend this. That's Iron Widow by Jiran Chaitao, or Jay Cao. Hope I'm not butchering that. So I talked earlier about how most of the books on the list are relatively short in terms of you're not looking at days or months of reading. But this one is quite thick. This is Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. Now, Daniel T. Jackson actually reached out to me a few years ago saying he was writing a book and that he'd be interested in sending me a proof copy. And so I got a Kindle version of it. I loved it so much I bought the physical copy and I read through that as well. Now, there's no audiobooks for this, and I think there might be an audiobook for the first book now, but there wasn't an audiobook when I read it. So for me, to enjoy a book so much that I was reading for that long, it says a lot. So this is a 680 page book. It's brilliant. The general idea of this, and this first book does feel a little rough, but it's still really interesting. The general idea is there are these people that start to realize they have these powers, very differing powers in what they can do. The very different areas of the world as well. So it's not like they're mates or anything like that. So their journeys that you read about happens in very different areas of the world. But they have these powers that I think are basically the last time anybody had these sort of powers, the world went into like turmoil and it was very, very bad for everybody and it was a very bad time. But it's really interesting to kind of read about them. So you're talking about multiple perspective reading here. You've got everything kind of represented there. You've got different powers. You've got the brave, kind, confident one. You've got the weird, creepy, scary, possibly evil one. All these sort of different characters kind of evolve throughout this book. Now, the reading for me was a little passive in terms of it's very formal. The character conversations aren't particularly friendly or colloquial or anything like that, but still a fantastic fantasy read. And there is a sequel that's out that I've got and I have read, and that is also brilliant. And there is a third that came out, I believe, in January of this year, which I've not yet had a chance to read. He did send me a Kindle version or a kind of digital version. I've not yet read it yet. I do want to pick up the physical book beforehand though, and it would be great if there's an audiobook, because reading 600-700 pages at a time, it gets quite long when I only read like maybe 3 or 4 days a week for like half an hour, because I'm a massive gamer and I scroll on my phone a lot. Either way, Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson is another fantastic book that you may never have heard of in the fantasy genre that you should get to know. The first book, as I said, is a tad rocky. The second book is brilliant. Things start to just like get bigger, expand, more characters are involved. There's people that start betraying people. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. So yeah, give that one a shot. Even if the front cover is quite shiny in my window. Look, you can see my ring light just here. Then the last physical copy of a book I've got to show you is The Return of the Knights by Gregory Contaxis. Now, I have a few things to admit with Gregory Contaxis. He has sent me his second and his third books, and I've yet to read them. I have, however, read a novella he did, which was not that great. This, however, was fantastic. Now, this is a really interesting kind of book because it's been described as Game of Thrones meets Greek mythology in this explosive epic fantasy story packed with war, medieval lore, magic, loyalty, and bravery. The first book in the series, The Dance of Light, will take you on an epic journey to a fancy world of men and mythical creatures, will keep you spellbound till the very end. So it's a book featuring this kind of character who rocks up at this palace one day in a war is starting. I'll try there. A war is starting and there's this really bad guy who is just called Walter. And then a chap called Elliot rocks up and he's like, I'm well powerful, I'm a wicked fighter, let me go try and defeat him and draw him out onto this bridge so we can fight him. And everyone's like, I have no idea what you're on about. So the first kind of few chapters of the book are this princess or queen, I think she is, trying to be convinced by this Elliot chap that he should go and help them do it. And she's like, well, we've got no other choices, that or we lose the bridge. So yeah, crack on, mate, have a go. And it's basically that journey. Now the names for me were so very underwhelming. You've got like the Palace of Dawn, but then, like, the queen is, her name's Sophie, and the main chap's called Elliot, and the main bad guy's called Walter. It's very, very odd, but there we go. It's still a fantasy book if you can get past the non-fantasy names. And as I said, it's quite unique and different in what it does. There's some good action scenes in here. There's some good unique ideas in here. And as I said, the best thing sometimes with fantasy books is knowing that there's more to come. And there is, as I said, a sequel, and there is a third book. I do have both. They're both on my TBR shelf. I desperately want to read them. I mentioned there is a novella. Novella kind of takes on parts of one character from one of these books in a very different part of the story. It tried to fill in too much action, but then too quickly at the end. So it was too slow at the start, too much action, then not a lot, and I just didn't really care. Novellas are very, very difficult to get into anyway, but either way, don't worry about that one. Pick this one up, pick up the second, pick up the third. So that's The Return of the Knights by Gregory Contaxis. Now, you notice I'm standing over onto the side here because I don't actually have the physical copy of these books, and I'm about to say a name or an IP that you'd be like, yeah, I've heard of that, but you may never have actually read the books and appreciated how good the books are as individual entities. So I'm talking the Witcher book series. Now, you may instantly turn off and be like, yeah, obviously I've read the Witcher book series. That's why I then went on to play the games, and that's why I've seen the animated series, and that's why I'm interested in the new game that's coming out, etc. But you may never have read the books. And if you're a gamer or even just a reader who's into fantasy, these are fantastic. So the Witcher series is by a chap called, and I've got his name on the screen because it's a little bit difficult, but I think it's Andrew Sapkowski or Andrzej Sapkowski, who is a Polish author who wrote some Witcher books. Now, the first book, they're a little confusing. So the first, I believe, 2 or 3 books are short story compilations. They kind of build you into the world of the Witcher, these monsters that he has to face, his job, some of the characters that come along, that sort of thing. Then from the 4th book on is a continuous series. You don't necessarily have to have read the short stories beforehand to get the series that happens, but they are kind of, and I don't know if they're referred to as like the 0.5 books, I don't know. Either way, they're all brilliant. The short stories for me, I actually kind of preferred because they were just kind of like the Witcher game where you're going off and you're doing side quests for this person and each individual story is really interesting. But basically, if you know nothing about The Witcher, and I referred to him kind of with the God Killer, is this person who takes on money or takes money from people to go off and kill these beasts. Witchers are genetically enhanced people who, I think they have kind of like cat enhancements and other enhancements. They take these potions and some of them don't survive, some of them do survive, and the ones that do survive become witches and they have powers, like they can throw fire and they can push with air and all this sort of stuff. They can control minds, all of this sort of stuff. Kind of Jedi-esque, I don't know, but they have swords. It's very cool. If you've not checked out The Witcher, there's obviously the TV series, there's the animated series, there's the non-animated series with Henry Cavill, there's the games, all of this sort of stuff. If you're not a reader, you can check all of those out as well. But the book series is still very much worth reading. Even if you've played and watched all of that sort of stuff, you might recognize some things from the games or the TV series in the books, but either way, they're still a great read. They're just really enjoyable. And as I said, once the series starts, you already know Geralt as the Witcher and his kind of idea, and then you get to meet some of the characters we all know, we all love from the series, and it kind of builds out the world from there. So it's really, really interesting. If you've not yet checked out the books of this, you really should. And even if you have checked out the books, go check out the Henry Cavill TV series. It's not phenomenal, but it is gritty. It is good. It captures the atmosphere perfectly. He does a fantastic performance. It's now been taken over by one of the Hemsworth brothers, which we'll see how that one comes out. The Apparently the TV series, the animated version, is quite interesting as well. And obviously there's the new Witcher 4, which focuses on Ciri, who is Geralt, who is our main character throughout most of the books, is kind of apprentice, who is this lively young woman who is learning to become a Witcher. And I don't think there's many female Witchers, so I think the idea of that is quite interesting to them as well. But definitely check that out if you've not yet checked it out. So those are some of my fancy recommendations for books you may not have read in the genre yet. I just realised how animated my hands are when I'm not holding books. I don't know what to do with them. Anyway, make sure you check out some of the books. Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know if you've enjoyed any of them. Let me know if I've just named a load of really popular fantasy books and you think, well, I've learned nothing here, you absolute moron. Put that in the comments if you want to put that in the comments. Either way, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed something in this video. If you did, drop a like, drop a comment. Subscribing would be fantastic. And if I don't see you ever again, bye. If I do see you again, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.